Hey guys, welcome to this new video. Woo! Totally didn't just start the video off from where did it. Nigel, you have anything to say?
Ah,
Oh yeah, that's good enough. Anyways, we're watching top 15 nightmare fuel scary stories, but they're true. So yeah, guys. Woo.
My childhood and adolescence, but there are only a few that I hang on to instead of shrugging them off and erasing them from my mind altogether. The story I'm about to tell you is long due to a chain of events, and please forgive me if the story gets a little stressed out more than it needs to be through intricate detail. So the story starts back 8 years ago. I was a fairly young kid who lived in a trailer park between two towns in eastern Iowa. Each town was about 5 miles out, and there wasn't much to them at the time. The trailer park was pretty desolate, and it was consumed by fields of corn and timber. Back then, it wasn't hard for me and my childhood friend Brock, who I'm still in contact with today, to stay occupied. Cap guns and lightsaber battles were part of our daily agenda. It was nice and simple. However, things started to spiral a bit, and I'm still trying to come to grips with them today. It was a cloudy and musty overhang summer day. My friend and I were doing our normal ritual of pretending to fight off Sith overlords, until one of us, I'm not sure exactly who, had the bright idea to bring the game into the cornfield. Looking back, in retrospect, it was probably one of the most foolish mistakes we made that could have saved Brock and me a whole lot of trouble. Our game shifted to the cornfield, and it was really cool, until about 10 minutes in. We got so into the game that at some point we split up, which at first wasn't a bad idea, but things turned grim quickly. After another 10 minutes or so, my friend and I regrouped back in the cornfield, and what we saw still haunts me today. About 15 yards away was a distinguishable figure moving towards us. It was clearly a man, and he was roughly 6 feet tall. The man was looking me straight in the eyes. I remember his face and appearance clearly. He was wearing torn up jeans, a white t-shirt with sweat stains, and his face was beaten up with scars and a slightly purple tint in his lips. We were completely in shock when he started making his way towards us. He started approaching faster, quickly accelerating. I could see the malevolent intentions in his eyes. I was frozen for 10 through 15 seconds before I realized my friend had already booked it out of there. We ran for 5 minutes straight, not even looking back. We ended up making it to the cornfield, regrouped once again, and made it to safety at his grandmother's house. We then made a pact to never tell each other's grandparents. However, it doesn't end there. A week later, things became more odd. Daily occurrences would happen. My grandfather would leave for work every morning at 7 a.m. sharp, but he would always find random trinkets and surprises on our porch each day. However, they were never the same. To give you a gist of some of the items, from what I recall was a severed doll head, some notes with gibberish written on them, bags of human feces, and a pair of muddy shoes. It was summer now, and the collection of random items had come to a halt. I wish to say that it was all over, but it wasn't. One night, I had been gently falling asleep in my bed when I heard a soft knock on my window. Keep in mind, I lived directly across the street from the cornfield where my friend and I had our first encounter. I hadn't been frightened by the knock, as I figured it was just Brock wanting me to sneak out with him to go fuck around. I peeked out my blinds. I was wrong. Across the street, I saw a familiar silhouette, dimly lit by the streetlights, with his arms raised up waving at me. I could even see his yellow, crooked smile. I closed my blinds, rushed to my grandparents' room, and, scared shitless, told them what had happened, and told them about the first encounter with my friend. They dialed the police immediately, who showed up very quickly and made a futile effort to comfort me. It only gets worse from there. Another week or so later comes the final encounter. My friend and I were not allowed to go anywhere alone. We either had to escort each other or be accompanied by an adult. On the night of this last encounter, we were at my friend's house in the yard tossing the football. Daylight was dwindling and fading into night. My friend and I were about 20 feet away from each other playing catch when I had thrown the ball past him and he had to go retrieve it. As soon as he went back to get it, I noticed his attention shift towards the alley which led to his shed door. His face grew pale and he walked towards me, trying to play it off, but he was obviously scared. He shoved me in the front door and alerted his grandmother. He said, "He's in the shed. He's in the shed and has a knife. Call the police." His grandmother didn't take a second thought and dialed them immediately. The police showed up and had to escort the man out of the shed. It turns out that he had been following my friend and I around since the first encounter and had been taking shelter in their shed since it had never been locked. We've both moved away from the neighborhood since then and have never spoken a word of it again.
A week or so before my 10th birthday, I walked to the corner store with a $5 bill and picked up a jar of ragu for my mom. On my way home, a man I'd never seen before fell in step with me and began talking. "Hi," he said cheerfully. "My name is Dr. Ramsey. I'm a pediatrician. Do you know what a pediatrician is?" I walked along silently, not replying and fervently hoping he would take that as a sign he should leave me alone. Subtleties were not his strong suit, though, because he kept on chattering. "Are your parents looking for a pediatrician for you?" "Of course, you're almost a big girl now. You'll be needing another kind of doctor soon, won't you?" "That's okay, though. They can still bring you to me until then. What's your name? You have beautiful hair. I was just on my way to get some suckers for the candy jar in my office. Do you like suckers?" Thankfully, we were nearing my house, so I ran forward up the back steps and through the kitchen door. I didn't know it then, but that was the beginning of a very long, very scary ordeal. It didn't take long after that for Dr. Ramsey to begin showing up. At first, it seemed benign enough, at least to a kid. He would drive by nearly every day, smiling and waving. I told my mom, who said maybe it was on his way home from work. But then, the phone calls began. My dad called me into the living room and sat me down. He asked about the day Dr. Ramsey followed me home, and if I talked to him. He said I wasn't in trouble, but that I needed to tell him the truth. I told him no, and he asked if I was sure. Could I be forgetting something? I told him no again, and he frowned, then asked, "Then how does he know your name?" I didn't know. It turns out that was not all he knew. He knew my sister's name as well. Pretty soon neither my sister or I were allowed to answer the phone. He called several times a day. At first, neither of us knew what he was saying. Then, one night, one of my brothers told us that he was telling my parents that he was going to hurt me, and later, my sister. Things got complicated after that. My dad had called the police, but as this was before there were any stalking laws, there was not a lot they could do. They told my parents to call back if he tried anything. My dad then called a friend of his back from the day who happened to be a cop. For the next month, my dad's friend escorted me to and from school. Suddenly, life as I knew it came screeching to a halt. I couldn't walk to school alone, I couldn't play outside, I couldn't walk to Super America, sort of like a 7-Eleven for those who don't know. When access to me was completely denied, things escalated. It was around this time he began threatening my sister as well. Then one afternoon, my sister, two of my brothers, my mom and I were in the kitchen. One of my brothers saw a glimpse of someone in the garage. They'd seen him too. Dr. Ramsey came bolting out of the garage, my brothers chasing after him. They ran all the way to Cherokee Park, where he lost them in the trees. My parents called the police again, but nothing came of it. The only information they had was a description and a name that was almost certainly fake. A couple weeks later, we woke up to find our dog hanging from the side porch. She was a gorgeous saddleback German Shepherd born the same day I was. We were all devastated. The cops said there was no evidence it was him and ruled it accidental, but none of us believed that. His phone calls became more informative in the meantime. He would talk about who was home and who wasn't. If my brother would say my
Don't you
dad
love
was
that
home, he
picture?
would tell him who was really in the
So
house.
beautiful.
He also would talk about the house itself, about the window in the kitchen he could easily open with a knife from the outside even when it was locked, and about the French doors that connected the living room to the side porch and how the lock could be easily finagled from the outside if you jiggled it just right. That night, my dad put in some carpenter nails at the bottom of the French doors until he could get a new lock ordered. My parents had to go to the company event for my dad's work. My older brothers were at Saints West roller skating rink. My sister was on the phone with her best friend. My little brother
Wow, such an awesome ad.
Ah.
was on the floor asleep.
After this,
I was
we're
watching
watching
Devo on the midnight special with Wolfman Jack. It was late. Suddenly, the top of the French
Oh,
doors swung inward, and in the few
I was gonna
milliseconds
ask
before
to
the
take a
nails on the
nap,
bottom caused
but I
them to
don't think
snap
I
back,
need
I could
that.
see his silhouette.
Nigel.
My sister whipped the phone at the television, and we ran up the stairs.
Mm,
About halfway up, we
I'd
realized my little
barely take
brother
a
was
nap,
still
but
asleep on the living room floor. As quietly as we could, we slipped back down the stairs to get him. We all went into our bedroom and didn't turn on the light. This way we could still see outside. We watched out the window for a while, and when we didn't find him, we crept down the hall to our brother's room to look. We looked down and could see someone standing at the back door. He knocked loudly. "What do you want?" my sister asked out of the window. He stepped back and said, "Is this the Mercy residence? I have a pizza for delivery. Can you come to the door?" She scoffed at him, declaring she was not stupid. She could see he didn't have a pizza and she was calling the cops. He left. A short while later, my brothers returned home. We told them what happened and they walked around the yard watching for him. They came back in and things settled down. By now, we'd pretty much given up calling the cops because it never helped. So we just went back in, each of us, except my youngest brother, still asleep, carrying a knife from the kitchen, just in case. Eventually, one of my brothers went into the kitchen to get a bowl of cereal as a snack. You know that sensation you get when you could just feel someone watching you? Yeah, he had that in spades. He kept looking around the kitchen through the doorway into the dining room at the windows. He didn't see anything, but he could still feel the eyes on him, so he went closer to the door to try to see better. The kitchen lights were reflecting on the windows to the door. It had 3 rows of 3 windows, so he still couldn't see. He stepped closer, then closer again, until he was right up to the door, then cupped his hands on either side of his head so he could see. There, on the other side of the window pane, was Dr. Ramsey, smiling back at him. He turned to yell for my older brothers, and when he looked back again, he was gone. They went out again to look for him, but didn't see him. The next night, we were at the table playing Crazy Eights, and my brother was restless. My sister asked him what's wrong, and he said he always felt like any minute now there would be a boom noise on the door or window. Almost immediately after he finished his sentence, boom, on the window right behind him. In the chaos, the 2 eldest ran out, but he was already gone. A couple of weeks later, I was at school. We were outside on the playground during recess. I was swinging upside down when I saw that now familiar blue Ford Galaxy cruising by, moving slowly. There he was, smiling and waving. He called my name and I ran to the teacher and told her. The school had been told all about him, and she took me inside right away and called my mom. That same day, my mom had gotten a call from the school office asking her to verify that my dad was picking me up, as he called to say that he was on his way. He wasn't. Not long after that, I woke up one night thirsty. I went down to the kitchen for a drink, and there, sitting alone in the dark, was my dad. On the table, a gun. He was tired of the police waiting until Dr. Ramsey tried something. He was tired of his children being terrorized. He was tired of being afraid every time he left for work that something would happen to us while he was gone. I sat with him for a time, watching, before he sent me back to bed. These events and many more took place over a period of around 18 months. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. He vanished from our lives, the phone calls, the drive-by within the creepy waves, everything. For a long time during and after the Dr. Ramsey days, I would have recurring nightmares in which I would wake up to find him standing over me as I slept. It took a long time before I felt like a kid again. I found out years later when he was calling, Dr. Ramsey would tell my parents that he was going to rape and kill me, and later my sister, and that there was nothing they could do about it. I don't know what happened to him when he disappeared. I don't know if he was in a car wreck, locked in prison, in a coma, but sometimes I wonder if the wait ended for my dad when he was sitting in the darkened kitchen that one night. I don't know, and I'm not sure I want to. If you ever want to hear some of the most fucked up stories you'll ever find in your life, just ask the regular graveyard guy at your local all-night convenience store for some of the shit he's seen. And dear God, man, bring some popcorn. In my life, I've been the graveyard guy for not one, not two, but 3 different 7-Eleven locations that I'm going to...
Or, person. Oh, God.
Sorry, Beard.